Hello, I'm Rory Smith. This episode is brought to you by Mind Journal, the world's #1 best-selling journal for men. And I was very selective when choosing a sponsor because I've always said I would genuinely prefer not to have one than to team up with a product that I don't believe in. I'm a huge fan of journaling, and one of the main reasons for choosing Mind Journal is that it's developed with psychology professors and therapists and based on proven science, and that's why I believe it works for me. If you want to get into journaling, upgrade your experience, or give it as a gift to someone, then go to mindjournals.com and enter Rory Smith 10 at checkout for a 10% discount on selected products. I only have sponsors I truly believe in. Mind Journal has helped me, and I really hope it helps you too. Adam Lind has hundreds of thousands of online followers who follow his life on board his 59ft Narrowboat, where he lives full-time with his wife Lauren and their dog Shanti. I had planned to talk to him about his life on board, but as we got chatting, he shared with me some personal insights into his mental health, and we really connected on this. He shared with me some of the tragedy in his life and how he manages his feelings on that today. And what I find really interesting is how he views vulnerability. You see, many people see it as a weakness, but not Adam. He told me why he sees it as powerful. And he also taught me to be vulnerable. If you follow my story, you'll know that in June 2024, I shared my own experience of mental health challenges. I actually recorded this interview with Adam just before that, and having this conversation was one that helped me to see the power of vulnerability. I remember thinking during this interview how beautiful it is that Adam is just being himself. I personally have a lot to thank him for in what he taught me during this episode, and I really hope it can help you in some way too. Are you on the boat at the moment?
I am on the boat at the moment. I've just arrived back from a yoga class, cycled home, excited to do this podcast.
Oh, bless you, mate. Thank you. Where are you moored at the minute?
We are moored currently in a village just outside of Nottingham.
Mm-hmm. Do you travel around a lot in it?
So we've lived on the boat for 4 years, and for the first 3 years we had this license called a continuous cruiser license, which means we move every 2 weeks. But for the last 6 months we've actually been in one place, but we've just this week given up that spot, so from next week we will be fully nomadic again.
Right. And are you going back to the every 2 weeks move, or are you planning to long stay again?
Yeah, the plan is every 2 weeks. That's kind of the maximum you can stay, but I think our plan for the summer is just to be quite nomadic and explorative along some canals we haven't visited before, and then see what happens. It seems to be this balance of like really wanting to move around a lot for a while and then feeling the need to kind of be more stable. So we're just going to kind of go with how we feel.
Gotcha. So it sort of takes you at different times. You want more of a base, and at times you want to travel more.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So where did the idea for the boat come around?
The idea for the boat came, well, there's many ways to answer this question actually. So prior to living on a boat, I met my wife 11 years ago when we were studying at university, and we graduated and kind of both really didn't know what we wanted to do for our next steps. So we decided to pack a bag and just travel. And we spent 5 years on the road attempting to hitchhike from London to India.
Wow.
Which we can go into after if you want, but I'll try and stick to the boat question for now. And after 5 years on the road, we decided to come home for various reasons that, again, we can go into. And we were kind of got back to England. We were living with my wife's mum because we'd not been in the UK for so many years, and we were a bit like, what to do. Like, some of our friends were still living in Leeds where we studied, some of our friends were in London, but neither of them really felt like our place anymore. And we still had this kind of like nomadic, like blood running through our veins. Like, the idea of just staying in one place after traveling for 5 years felt quite scary. So we were trying to figure out the best way to do it. And one day my mother-in-law just came home and said, "Oh, I've just been for a walk with my friend. He lives on a boat. Is that something you'd consider?" And we were like, "What? You can actually live in boats?" Like, I grew up in London, and I'd go to Camden and I'd see the canal boats, but I didn't imagine people actually lived in them. And my wife at first was very much like, "No, like, I need a space to do yoga. I need a space to grow vegetables." So we kind of let the idea sit for a moment. And then I went on YouTube and just became like obsessed with this boat life that I didn't know existed. And I was like, "Look, Lauren, this girl does yoga on the boat, and this guy's growing vegetables on top of his boat. Like, it's all possible." So we went to see a couple and was just like, let's give it a go. Like, we didn't have the money for it at the time, so we took a loan from the bank. We bought a boat and was like, let's just see if we enjoy it. And here we are 4 years later, and it's become somewhat of an identity to us now as well. So that's kind of an avenue of how we got into it.
That's incredible. So how old when you bought it, and how old are you now?
I'm 31, and we bought it when I was 27.
27. Wow. So those 5 years that you were traveling then, was it intended to be 5 years? Because that's quite a long time.
No, there was kind of no time scale. We basically, initially when we decided to travel, we were like, let's go to Australia or Thailand or all these places that people go to, which, I'm sure are beautiful. I ended up visiting Thailand myself. But I remember looking at a map and thinking, like, there's so much untrodden land between here and Asia that just, like, it felt like weird to be missing out on it all. And we followed a couple on YouTube that used hitchhiking because, one of the misconceptions when people hear about our travels is that we've got some trust fund or that we're like really rich or something to have the ability to do that. I'd like to caveat by saying both of those are couldn't be further from the truth. We basically saved up about £1,500 each over a few years. So we had £3,000 and we figured if we took out the cost of travel, which would usually be, train, plane, bus, and we took out the cost of accommodation, which would usually be hotel, hostel, then actually we needed very little to travel on. So that's where the whole hitchhiking idea came up. So we were kind of just hitchhiking around Europe at first. We took a £10 bus from London to Amsterdam, hitchhiked from Amsterdam down to like Belgium and France and Spain, spending very little. We had our tent with us, so we were camping. And then we were like, do you know what? We really like the flow of this. Why don't we try and hitchhike to India?
Wow.
That sounds like a smart idea. But always with this idea that like there was kind of no time frame and no goal. And if at any point it felt not right, then it was okay to turn back. And actually we ended up reaching India, but not by hitchhiking. We ended up getting as far as Turkey, close to the border of Iran. And then partly because of visa issues and partly because of my own mental health issues I was actually having at the time, it felt right to kind of come home for a bit. So we ended up coming back to the UK for a while and then actually flew to India for a year later, about a year after, I think.
A lot of people would be worried about relying on hitchhiking for reasons related to danger. Was that a concern for you at all?
So I've always had this inherent belief that the majority of people in this world are good. And I'm always called like an optimist or too utopian. And I was like, do you know what? I'll try and prove it. So, and it's like, I've got a lot of beliefs around this. Like, you grow up with this term like stranger danger, right? And, like, don't talk to strangers, don't accept candy from strangers, and definitely don't like get in a car with a stranger. So I always say like, it's funny that I went against this to the nth degree. And yeah, I don't know. I've just, like I say, I have this inherent belief that people are good. I'm not saying bad things don't happen, but I said many times when I was hitchhiking to my family, I'd be like, if I get killed hitchhiking, you better not tell people not to hitchhike, because we would have already had over 1,000 rides from people that didn't only give us a ride, you know, they took us back to their home to stay, they took us out for lunches, we exchanged stories about life and grief and goals and, you know, more than anything you can imagine. And I just feel like this human connection that is so integral to our growth as a species has been like ripped away from us basically, but because of the belief that we should be scared of our fellow neighbor. And not to be too like anti-capitalist or blame the news and stuff, but I use this example of like, I remember seeing on the news once that this lady got like mugged outside of the local shop, or another guy got like stabbed, you know, up the road. And obviously these things are terrible, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be news, but if they are news, then why isn't it also news that the group of youths that found a woman's handbag, took out the purse, saw her address and went and delivered it back to her, or, you know, all these acts of kindness that actually happen in our day to day. I've just never understood on a small scale, when it's just one person that something's happened to, rather than, you know, countries at war, why one is more news than the other.
Yeah, that's such a good point you raised, because when we watch the news and we read articles in mainstream media newspapers, it is all the bad stuff that's happening in your local area, in the country, and around the world. And actually, if you look at the good news side of it, which is actually really difficult to find online, because sometimes, you know, when I'm looking for guests or stories to come onto the podcast, it's really, really difficult to find those good stories sometimes, because the stories around the world are so negative. So with you going in with that mindset of most people in the world are good, did it even surprise you how kind strangers were?
100%. And I also thought that, like, you know, they're not only taking, we're not taking a risk just by getting into their car. They're taking a risk by picking up these two, you know, this crazy couple on the side of the road with a big backpack. It's like it's a two-way street, and there's this real sense of vulnerability there that I thought made it really special. I would also say, like, anyone wanting to hitchhike, you know, using your intuition is like a really good notion. Like, you don't have to say yes to every ride. There was some cars that pulled up, and, you know, maybe they were perfectly nice, but something in my gut said, you know, I don't feel like getting in this car. So just being like, oh, thank you so much, but, you know, we're gonna wait. But yeah, it definitely surprised me. Like, I remember the first time we hitchhiked was from a place called Utrecht in the Netherlands, and we were just going South Netherlands, like maybe just a couple hours. And I remember standing there with our thumbs out thinking, like, no one is ever actually going to pick us up. Like, how stupid is this? Like, surely not. And all these cars are just like rushing past you. And I think we only waited on that one like 10 minutes, and then this car just pulls up on the side. And I'll never forget, it was this like young couple, and they were so excited because they'd never picked up a hitchhiker before, and we were so excited because we'd never hitchhiked before. And like, we all stopped and we got a coffee, and they like took us a little bit further than we needed to, and that was just like the perfect opener of like, wow, you know, like we're going to connect with people on such a level. Because, not to dwell back to the news thing, but this idea that we only hear the bad news, is it breeds fear. And like, I have quite a hard rule now that I don't read the news or watch news or consume any news. I have a lot of news alerts turned off on my phone. You know, the stuff I need to know will still drip feed to me through social media anyway. But, and I'm not saying that's the right way to be, that's just my way. But I noticed when I came back from my travels and spent a bit of time kind of more in the media world watching the news, I was going out, like I visit London a lot, and I was fearful of people around me, like, oh, is that guy going to mug me? Is that guy going to this? And I really had to check in and be like, whoa, like, you used to sit there and look at these people and be like, oh, hey, how are you? Or, you know, and these people aren't doing anything to make you feel that way, but it's, I believe it's the stuff I was absorbing and consuming that were making me fearful of what was going on around me.
And in effect then affects your mental health.
100%. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'd say like that kind of area isn't something that massively has like affected my mental health, but I think as a society, you know, you see it, we used to live in tribes, right? And we used to live in tribes of about 70 to 80 people. Everyone had their role. We knew everyone in our tribe. And we've evolved as a species so quickly over the last 150 years compared to the last 100,000 years that now all of a sudden, like, our nervous system and our ability to like regulate our emotions hasn't caught up. So you get on the London Underground in the morning and there's 100 people in this carriage squashed in together. No one's making eye contact. No one's smiling at each other. It's like this level of disconnect we have as a species languages we're really not used to, and it's not these people's fault. Like, I'm not expecting everyone to jump on the tube and be like, "Good morning," but it's like we've developed as a society in a way that I think's really detrimental to our well-being because of this disconnection we have.
And it's that connection of community that's so important. And I find, I've done a bit of traveling myself, and I find that particularly in countries where they don't speak English a lot of times, and I've traveled to Thailand, which is one of my favorite countries in the world, and it's just a little backpack on my back, and off I go, me and my husband, and we travel around, we go to all these different places. And I find that I sometimes have more connection with the people that I meet on those trips who can't speak English than sometimes people who speak English in my own country. Do you find that language is a barrier to connection when you travel?
That's a really, really nice question and interesting thought, first of all. So thanks for sharing that. I'm intrigued actually to learn more, but I think look, to be really matter of fact, there was barriers in the sense of, I couldn't maybe go into depth about, certain thought patterns, or like tell them about like how my mum grew up and stuff like that. But at the same time, particularly in Turkey, where I'd say we had the strongest language barrier and had the most fruitful experiences hitchhiking, the level of connection you can feel, like being taken to a family's home because this guy's just picked you up on the side of the road. We spent about 3 or 4 days there without the ability to communicate through language, and we just cooked and we made music and we went on walks, and there was almost something more special about the connection. Like, when we left, we all felt such sadness because we were leaving and love for each other. So yeah, I'd say it's not a barrier for sure. There are barriers, but I think what's beautiful is it allows us maybe to connect more to this intuitive part of ourself I might have been referring to earlier when we were tribal, like this intuitive connection that we have for people.
This episode is brought to you by Mind Journal, the world's #1 best-selling journal for men. And I was very selective when choosing a sponsor because I've always said I would genuinely prefer not to have one than to team up with a product that I don't believe in. I'm a huge fan of journaling, and one of the main reasons for choosing Mind Journal is that it's developed with psychology professors and therapists and based on proven science, and that's why I believe it works for me. If you want to get into journaling, upgrade your experience, or give it as a gift to someone, then go to mindjournals.com and enter Rory Smith 10 at checkout for a 10% discount on selected products. I only have sponsors I truly believe in. Mind Journal has helped me, and I really hope it helps you too. So going back to the boat then, so when you came home, as you said, there was multiple factors in that. Was one of them your mental health you mentioned?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was growing up, I used to suffer really badly with something called intrusive thoughts, which are essentially these thoughts that are kind of these unwanted, repetitive, incessant thoughts that can take over your mind. And the way I describe them, how a lot of people can relate to them, are like, you could maybe be like in the back of a car and your mind would be like, what would happen if I just like swung this car door open? Or you could be like on a train platform and like no part of me was sad or suicidal, but my mind would be like, wonder what would happen if you just like threw yourself on the tracks. And at first these were kind of thoughts when I was a kid, and they kind of developed into more OCD thoughts around like, if I don't run and like touch that lamppost in the next 10 seconds, then something terrible will happen to like someone I love. And I never really questioned these thoughts, and they were kept at bay for quite a while. And there was a point during our travels when they came back really incessantly, and I was essentially having a lot of like existentialism, worries about like the point of life. And it was almost, I explain it as I'd created a life where we had so much freedom, almost too much freedom, that it made me feel trapped in my mind because I had like too much time to think. And as an overthinker who like prides themselves on like projects and like things like that, it became really overwhelming to the point where I essentially had a bit of a breakdown in Turkey. And I'd never told my wife or anyone about these thoughts before. And I told her, and we came back and I started to share a bit about what was going on with me. And the thing I'll never forget is I made an Instagram story just talking about these intrusive thoughts that I had. Put my phone down. I went for a walk. I came back. I had like 200 messages in my inbox, which was not normal. And I was like, oh my God, what's happened? And all these people being like, oh my God, like I've suffered with these thoughts since I was a child. And I've always thought I was crazy. I always thought I was evil. Like I went on to study a lot more, and particularly in new mothers, it's so common about like what would have happened if I just like dropped my baby or threw my baby down the stairs. And I told my sister about this, and she was like, she's got 3 children, and her face was just like a ghostly white, like, oh my God, like, thank you, like I've always thought I was evil. And I guess again, this idea of like, one of my core values in life is expressing vulnerability, because I think we live with so many things going on in our head, and I did for so many years that, you know, I had to take a break from the life I was living to really take stock, learn what was going on with my mind, and then teach myself tools and ways to kind of combat it, I guess.
How did you reach that place to accept for yourself that you've got those things going on in your mind? Because that's not an easy journey to deal with.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I read a book. When we got back to the UK, I was in quite a bad space, and I was basically sitting in the spare room at my mum's house, kind of just like almost like it wasn't my childhood bedroom, but a bedroom I'd had because we'd moved house, but just sitting there thinking like, how am I back here? Like, what the hell's gone on? And there was this book on the bookshelf that I tried to read a few years ago, but thought it was a load of nonsense, to be honest. And it was called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And in it, on the first chapter, the first title of the first chapter is called You Are Not Your Mind. And I literally, before even reading the book, I just read that phrase. And I know it sounds really simple, but it was like a light bulb. And he goes on to talk a lot about like being the observer of your thoughts. And for so long, I was like, my mind had controlled me. And all of a sudden, I had this tool to actually be the one in control and start observing what was going on in my head. And for me, I was able to be like, okay, I accept that thoughts come in, but that doesn't mean that thought's real. And, you know, the more I practiced tools like that and many other tools that came along with it, I was able to, yeah, take back control of my mind in my eyes.
So how can you describe that for me? Because a lot of people talk about those thoughts in your head, and for someone who hasn't been through it, that's quite difficult to understand. So what does that actually mean? What are those thoughts? What does that feel like? Where do they come from, and what effect do they have? I know that's a big question.
Yeah, well, first of all, if you're one of these people that's never experienced it, I'm very happy for you. um, but yeah, there was a few questions there. I guess I'll start with what the thoughts are. I think is really dependent on the person. Mine were focused a lot around death, actually. And I lost my father when I was 17,
Oh, I'm
and I
sorry.
was left with all these questions of like, okay, he's gone, but like, where's he gone? And, you know, all these kind of like existential stuff that nobody really has answers to. Like, some people turn to religion, some people turn to spirituality, whatever it is you believe, you know, there's no like set answer. And it was these kind of thoughts that seemed to be creeping back in for me of like, you know, I'm living so freely, getting picked up by all these random people, and it's amazing, but like, what's kind of the point of any of it? Like, we're all gonna go, and where are we gonna go? And, you know, it was just so like, it sounds so strange to say it out loud again, but these were the thoughts that were consuming my everyday. And the idea of where they come from, yeah, again, it will be so dependent on each person, but I've been doing a lot of work recently about this idea that we have so many different parts of us inside ourselves, and usually I believe they stem from something in our childhood, often sometimes things that we don't necessarily consciously remember. So I do quite a lot of work trying to access like my subconscious and like the layers of myself that aren't, you know, on the surface. And it's amazing actually, like if you put yourself in a state through, I don't know, breath, yoga, meditation, whatever relaxation technique you like, I feel like our body and our subconscious has a lot of answers for us. But, you know, when we live in such a kind of fast paced, moment to moment, plan to plan calendar, it's hard to actually check back in with what's going on.
What
I
do
don't know if that fully answers your question.
yeah, no, it's great to explore. What do you mean by we have different parts inside us?
So this is something that's actually quite new to me over the last few weeks. So I'll try and do it justice of how I've understood it. But let's say a situation happened. I had a situation last week where I had quite a challenging experience with a company I was working with, and they called me and they basically told me they were slightly disappointed in the way something had happened in something we'd done that we'd worked together. And my initial reaction was like, not on the phone, once we got off the phone, was like, how dare they talk to me like that? Like, they don't realize that I did this and this and this. And to me, that part of me showing up was this kind of like, I call him like the moody angel. And he's like quite childish, and he's like got his two middle fingers up, like, you're wrong, but he's also wearing like angel wings because like, not only are you wrong, like, I'm right,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And then I like sit with it for a bit and I'm like, okay, what other parts of me are showing up here? And then I always try and bring in the part of myself that has compassion. And it's like, okay, I really didn't appreciate the way that the information was delivered to me, but maybe the person that delivered it, doesn't have a really good communication style. So like, there's a compassionate part of me. And it's like, for me, a situation happens or a thought happens, and I'm like, what part of me is showing up right now? And what part of me, because that for me has been such an integral tool, not only in mental health, but just navigating relationships, situations, discipline, because I feel like for a long time I was trying to push away certain parts of myself,
Mm-hmm.
including this part that fills me with these incessant thoughts. And I developed this skill of like naming my mind Jimmy,
Mm-hmm.
and when these thoughts would come in, be like, Jimmy, not now, not now. And it worked really well for a while, and only in the last 2 weeks, so it's interesting we're having this conversation. I've actually, through doing this parts work, have developed, Jimmy's always going to be there. So if I keep telling him to go away, we're just going to kind of be fighting against each other. So
Mm.
actually, by like accepting that every part of us has a place and there's no bad parts inside of us, that if we work kind of alongside them to explore them of where they came from or what they're actually trying to do, in my opinion, they're usually trying to protect us from something that we maybe don't even need protecting from. Then we can kind of like, yeah, constantly be in charge, like from this place of self, from this place of the observer, to
Mm-hmm.
kind of know what we're doing, know that we're not like just reacting rather than responding, is a way I like to call it. Um, and yeah, I can't tell if I'm sounding like a crazy schizophrenic that has like 19 personalities, or if this is coming across as like some kind of worth, but it's definitely working for me.
It's working for me too. It really is. It's
Okay.
really making me think actually, and I think it almost in a way gives me a new perspective in the journey that we're all on to find out who we are. And I think a lot of times there's a lot of boxes that people put themselves in, or society tells you that you should be in a certain box, or labels. And I think the trouble is a lot of times that people are looking for that linear answer of who they are, which is one thing, one sentence, one label, one box. But actually, what you're saying is that there's all these different parts of you that make up who you are.
Exactly. And I think, to put it on a really base level, to take it out of this kind of more, you know, energetic spiritual realm, like, I am a brother, I am a son, I am a husband, I am a friend. It's like, even just, and many of us have these aspects, right? So
Mm.
even from that, it's very obvious that we're not one thing,
Mm-hmm.
because the way we show up with our husband or wife, or the way we show up with our boss as an employee, is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really, I feel like, base level of understanding. And then, within that, within being a husband or an employee, you'll also have lots of different parts
Mm.
that show up. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating work for me. Like, I've always enjoyed, since having like, difficulties with mental health since I was young, I kind of channeled that into like, I feel like I live a pretty happy and content life in my mind now.
Mm-hmm.
And because of how much effort I put into this like level of trying to be self-aware and like self-growth.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about this stuff for me, like, yeah, I feel even in my body how much it excites me. And you talk about labels, I feel really honored and gifted that I've been able to create a job out of living on a boat. If people listening to this don't know, essentially I'm a content creator that documents my life living on a boat. But what's been so interesting, something I've had to let go of, is anyone I meet is like, how's the boat? Oh, the boat guy. And it's like, you know, the label became the boat. And I've had to work for ages to be like, ask me something other than the boat. But actually, you know, I now see it as a gift, because it's, you know, you maybe wouldn't have found me. I might not be having this conversation with you if it wasn't for living on the boat. So it is a label of mine, and one that I absolutely now love and adore. But it's one that, you know, of course, there's so much more to me than just a guy who lives on a boat, right? The same way there's more to you than a guy who does podcasts. And I think that those parts of us are what really excite me.
Is that a tricky balance for you as a content creator to try and figure out what parts of you to give?
Yeah. I mean, part of the reason that I started this parts work a few weeks ago is actually, I feel the last year I've been fairly lost again. And I don't mean lost in a way that like my mind's been tricking me or like I've had any kind of mental health problem. I've been perfectly happy. But I think we're a product of our environment, right? And I've definitely been channeling my energy in places I didn't want to be channeling them. Like the work that I do online as content creator, influencer, whatever you want to call it. And I know that has so many connotations and things surrounding it that I still have my own kind of feelings towards. You know, the nature of it is to be creating something online, which in turn has made me very obsessed with my phone, very obsessed with like feeding an algorithm, very obsessed with like, you know, my money essentially is earned through like working on brand partnerships, which I love doing. But you know, you can be offered this amazing thing and you do it, and then as soon as it's over, it's like, what's next? And there's this like, I found in myself, I can't speak for anyone else, starting to develop this kind of like hunger or greed for things that like actually I don't really want or serve me or need. And it's been an amazing actually liberation. Like I went away a couple of weeks ago for 3 days, and I put my phone in a box, which I hadn't done for so long. And this is when I was exploring all of this parts work alongside a coach I was working with. And since I've been back, I've just felt this real liberation. Like I bought myself now a phone box, and the phone lives in that box actually most of the time, unless I choose to intentionally get it out to consciously do something on it, be that work or whatever it is. And I've just felt so liberated because I didn't realize how much of a slave I'd become, you know, like to that part of my life.
And you don't even need to be a content creator to become a slave to it, because I think most people are nowadays in our society with scrolling and just constantly looking for something else and wanting more. And then one of the most hideous parts of social media is the comparison, that everyone else's life looks so bloody perfect, and you compare it to your own and you think, I don't look like that, I don't have that house, I don't have that car, I don't have this, I don't have that. And it's just a downward spiral. And actually what you're saying is that you don't even need to be a content creator to have that box. You don't even need a box, but a hypothetical box. And that's something that I'm exploring. I've sort of said to myself recently, because I find myself in the same situation as you, sort of looking at what other people are doing, and I'd sort of tricked myself into thinking this is for work purposes, when in fact it's escape purposes. So what I do
market research, I used to call it.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. More labels.
Yeah.
And I've sort of at times, especially in the weekend, I always say to myself, right, my phone is an old-fashioned phone. It makes calls, it receives calls, it sends messages, it receives messages. That's where it ends.
And how has that kind of felt for you? Have you felt a difference?
Well, I keep staring at it, thinking about scrolling. No, it does whenever I do it properly, and sometimes I have to put on airplane mode as well, just to completely remove it from my psyche. Otherwise, I will just be drawn to it. It's almost an addiction in a sense. It really is.
Oh, I'd say it's one of the biggest addictions we have as a society. And
Would you?
That's why, as crazy as it sounds, like I've had to buy this box, because when I've practiced before having it on airplane mode and it's in the room, I feel like it's like calling me. I
Yeah.
feel like it's looking at me.
Yeah.
So by having this box, it feels almost like some kind of ceremonial act of like the phone is now going in the box lid is being closed, the box is going on the shelf,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where it is. And I have to make, not like a huge effort in terms of physical strain, but I now have to say, oh, okay, I'm going to go over to the phone box and take it out and turn it back on, because I tend
Mm-hmm.
to turn it off as well. To do what? Scroll on Instagram? Whereas when
Mm-hmm.
it's just next to me, I've practiced before just like deleting apps.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found so interesting once, if I go on holiday with my wife, I usually delete all of the social media apps, just so there's no temptation. And I remember we went away not too long ago and we were like lying on the beach and I got my phone out, got my calculator up, and I was like, oh, what song was I just about to do? And I realized actually, because I deleted the Instagram app, the calculator had taken the place of where the Instagram app used to be. So I'd subconsciously picked up my phone, clicked on the space where Instagram usually is,
Oh, I
opened my
see.
calculator without even wanting to, then got confused about what sum I was trying to do. And then it hit me
Mm-hmm.
that actually it's now this involuntary act that I'm doing,
Yeah.
which is just, scary to say the least. And I think, if we look at it from a scientific perspective for the stuff I've researched, and I'm by no means a scientist or a
Mm-hmm.
professional in this way, but I listen and consume a lot of information about this stuff. And really what we're searching for is this dopamine hit.
Mm.
But the issue is, again, like, we used to get dopamine from like hunting our own food or building our own houses or all of this kind of stuff. But now we get dopamine hits so intensely, so quickly. The drops are so much more dramatic and it's so much harder to then build them again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the proper way that there might be like people that know about this stuff like squirming listening to my explanation, but
No,
that's
it
the way
makes sense. Yeah.
that's the way I took it basically. So that's
Mm.
been my kind of goal this last couple of weeks, is finding dopamine in the simple things. And when I've removed the phone, it's been amazing to like going for a walk without my phone and finding dopamine just like looking at actually what's in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
or reading. Like I love reading and I hadn't read in so long, and just from not having the phone this week I've read like nearly 1.5 books, which it normally takes me a year to read a book at the moment. And the final thing on it is what I can't believe is how much time I have. So like yesterday, for example, I'd said I had a work call at 10. So I said I'll turn my phone on at 9:45. I'd woke up at 7, done my stuff, checked the time on my clock, and it was like 8:30. I was like, oh, all right, I've got 45 minutes, so I'll go clean the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
which I'd never normally do. I'd be scrolling on my phone. Came in, I was like, oh, it's 8:40. That only took me 10 minutes. All right, I'll clean the living space and like pack all my papers away. Did
Mm.
that. Oh, it's 8:45. That only took 5 minutes. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm getting so much done and it's all happening so quickly. I've still now got 30 minutes to play with.
Uh-huh.
But this is all stuff that would have just been me scrolling.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's interesting what you're saying is the periods of time that it frees, because when you have those 5 minutes before the dinner's ready, or 10 minutes, or whatever it is that you're doing, and you think, oh, I'll just sit down, and automatically, you don't even think sometimes, it just happens, you just start scrolling. I love to, I mean, this is a positive power of social media. There was a post that you did recently and you talked about tiny habits, and you were saying the tiny things that you can do in the tiny time space that have the big impact. So I think a lot of times we pressure ourselves into thinking, for example, working out, it has to be 1 hour of the perfect workout. Well, 5 minutes of doing press ups, or even 100 press ups, 50 press ups, 10 press ups, 5 press ups are better than doing no press ups. So even if we fill those tiny spaces of time where we would normally be scrolling with just something, 5 minutes of journaling, 5 minutes of sit ups, 5 minutes of reading 3 pages of a book, whatever it is. And so that's the positive power of social media, that something that you taught me about tiny habits.
Oh, well, firstly, thank you so much. I'm really happy that you took something from that. And yeah, I agree. There's definitely a lot of the stuff that happens online that can inspire me. And that's kind of the sad part, is I feel, if I was to just give it all up tomorrow, there's definitely parts I'd miss, and I definitely try through my channels to add value. Like, that's really what I feel like I'm being called to do at the moment, is not making content for the sake of, the algorithm telling me I need to post 3 times a week, making content if I really have something to share that I think people are going to enjoy. But back to the tiny habits thing, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I'm the worst for this, and which is why I made a video about it. Like, I went away last week, put my phone in a box for 3 days. I come back and I'm like, that's it, never need my phone again. I'm quitting it all. It's like I hadn't eaten, I'm quite a sugar addict as well. Like, we love something like some chocolate or biscuits after dinner, and those 3 days I didn't eat sugar as well. I came back, I was like, I've never eaten sugar again. And I really had to check in with myself and be like, okay, even this parts work and stuff I'm telling you about now, I want to hold this kind of vulnerable flag that this has all only happened to me in the last couple of weeks. Who knows what I'm going to be doing in the next couple of weeks? I hope I'm not sitting on the sofa a slave to the phone again. But this is all, I've got this really fresh energy to be speaking about it. But the idea of the tiny habits is like what I just explained. It's very common if someone says, like, it's time for me to lose weight or get fit. It's like, I'm going to go on this dramatic diet. I'm going to cut all this stuff out. I'm going to work out 5 times a week. And then, like, a week later, we just kind of crumble because we've worked ourselves too hard. We've started to, like, say no to all these plans we had. We've started to change all of our pleasures that we enjoy in life. So the idea of tiny habits is, for example, exactly as you said, each morning I'm going to read 2 pages of a book. I'm going to do 5 sit-ups, and I'm going to practice breathing or a meditation for 2 minutes. They're just my ones, it can be anything you want. And, often I found when I committed to reading 2 pages of a book, I tend to have read a lot more than that. If I committed to doing 3 sit-ups, some days I would just do the 3, some days I'd do 10, some days I'd do 20. But with the commitment being really small, it feels like a much more accessible task to achieve. And I actually am quite an advocate, because I like positive reinforcement with myself. Is like the video you're referring to, I'd built a habit tracker. So I basically just got a piece of paper. I wrote my habits down the left-hand side. I think I had 7 or 8. And then across the top, I wrote 1 to 30, because I wanted to do it for 30 days. And each morning, as I did my 3 setups, I'd put a little tick next to day 1, the sit-ups, and you start to see this chart build. And there was this kind of real sense of like, wow, like I'm 10 days in and I've been doing all these habits for 10 days. And not only do I feel good because I've been adding these positive things to my life, I feel good because I'm actually seeing that I've been adding these positive things into my life. So yeah, habit trackers is something I'm definitely an advocate of.
Do you journal?
I hadn't in a really long time, and again in the last 2 weeks since not having the phone, it's something I've moved back into a lot. But again, I'm trying not to have like a really strict routine with it, because I find if I wake up and I'm like, right, I need to journal, and then if I don't do it, I'm like, oh, I should have done it, and da 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 da. But for example, just before we picked up this call, I was having a few thoughts, and I just always have my book or journal near me, and I just wrote like a few lines of what was going on in my head. And I heard this beautiful saying yesterday about one of the great things about journaling is that you can't write as fast as you can think. So we're often sitting there and we're thought, right? Whereas when you get your thoughts out down on paper, they have to slow down, because you physically have to think the words as you're writing them. And as I was writing just now, I was like, wow, it's so true. If I'm like, today I'm feeling like da 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 da, and this happened because of this, like it's so much slower than it would have been happening in my mind. And I just love that notion about one of the powers of, I guess, writing things down or journaling or whatever you want to call it.
You use your platform in such positive ways. I mean, there's a lot of fun on there as well. Let's be honest about it. There's a lot of funny videos.
Life's meant to be fun, right?
You know what I mean? It's not all spiritual and educational inspiration. There's a lot of funny stuff on there as well. But you're very vulnerable, and you are proud to show your vulnerability, and even during this interview. And I suppose that there's been a journey for you to get there. And firstly, I would imagine you have to be vulnerable to yourself, and then those closest to you, and then on social media. Was that a difficult journey?
That's a really good question, and one I don't think I've actually asked myself before. It's really strange, like being vulnerable has always been come very naturally to me, and I guess when I was a younger, I didn't used to call it vulnerable. I just used to call it like open. Like I've always worn my heart on my sleeve. I've always like told people I loved them,
Mm-hmm.
friends, family, shopkeepers. Like I've always felt like I've just had this kind of quite open personality. I think it's probably passed down. Like my mum's a very social person, and I observed growing up, our house was such an open house. Everyone would be there all the time. Um, and yeah, I think maybe it came from like living amongst a community that was very open, I guess. And when it came to showing up on social media in that way, I guess yeah, to be completely transparent, it didn't feel like something I was trying to do. I just felt like I was being how I usually am anyway. I've never been that good at small talk. It's never massively interested me anyway, so it wasn't going to work for me showing up either in a social situation, a podcast, or on my social media channel to talk about like the weather.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, yeah, I just think it's a part of me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really have an answer of how it came to be.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that living on the houseboat has had an impact on your mental health positively?
Yeah, for sure. I think um, the slow pace of life it brings, which okay, I want to say that with a lot of caution because there's been a real paradox in my life, particularly over the last 6 months, as living this really slow narrowboat life, but just filling my calendar and schedule with projects and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly at the beginning, I think cruising at only 3 miles per hour max speed through these picturesque forests around the UK of all these villages I've never seen before has just been completely calming. Um, I also think there's this really nice research that's been done recently called blue mind theory, which is basically the reaction that people have, the relaxation response people have when they're close to water.
Mm-hmm.
Often people, if they go near the seaside or they're near a lake or a river or the canals, like you often hear people walking up the canals, and I can hear them from the boat being like, oh, I just feel so peaceful to walk up here. And I think science is now proven there is something within us when we're close to water that we do have that response. So of course living on the water and being able to wake up and just how my mornings have been recently, just sitting on my front kind of bow deck reading a book, watching the ducks is amazing. But I guess what I would say is it can become easy to ignore it, as
Mm-hmm.
I think I had been for the last 6 months. Like I've been so consumed by what's going on within myself, it was almost like I hadn't been like, oh my god, I live on a boat. It's like I live on the water. Like it's like I've rewoken up to what's around me, because like anything in life, if we have too much of a good thing, we
Mm.
can start to forget what's right in front of us and always be the grass will always be greener, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've definitely re-fallen in love with the peace that living on the water brings.
Mm. So do you think that'll be, I mean, you've done it for quite a few years already. Do you think that will be a long-term thing, or do you not really think about that much?
Yeah, don't really think about it that much. It's like this will be our way of life until it serves us. At the moment, it's serving us really well.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I hope to have children in the next couple years, or maybe child, singular,
Mm-hmm.
rather than plural. And we imagine, as of now, raising the child on the boat. But also, if we decide one day it doesn't work for us anymore, then we'd be open to kind of whatever comes our way.
Mm. Is that a difficult balance for you, living the slow life, if you want to call it that, and appreciating what's around you, waking up, seeing the water, listening to the sound of the kettle, listening to the sounds of nature, and balancing that with setting goals for yourself and doing what you do online?
Yes.
Mm.
Absolutely, yes. And I don't think, as I've alluded to, I've realised how much of a difficult balance it was. And I think my scales had been, up until recently, completely tipped to the way of glorifying this busyness. And I'm so grateful for the opportunities I've had since I've built a presence online. And I just hadn't really taken stock to think like, whoa, like you don't need to say yes to everything. And same as yourself about the comparison, like, but these creators are doing this and this and this, and it's like this I was like, I'm running a race but there's no finish line. And now it's been this, just this beautiful reminder of I've got everything I need right here, and anything extra is a bonus. And I still want to say yes to these amazing opportunities, but without the same sense of like necessity, or without the same sense of by doing this thing it's going to bring me extra whatever it is, because I've got literally everything I need.
It's about learning what you have is enough, but setting that goal, and perhaps wanting it is okay, but needing it isn't okay.
100%. Like, I listened to this podcast recently of these, because I've always been quite entrepreneurial. I've never been employed. I've always been self-employed and done things that could fill a whole podcast to in the terms of like making mini businesses. And I listen, and I've always been interested in entrepreneurialism as well, which is also a funny paradox of the way I think people sometimes label me as this like super laid back boat guy. But I listened to this podcast of these 5 billionaires, and they were all saying how they start all self-made, and how still now the mindset they have is exactly the same as when they started, in the sense of there's more, it's never enough. And that was another wake-up call to me of like, wow, like I'm not saying I was ever going to be a billionaire, but I don't want to get to the age of 50 and still be priding myself on the next project, searching for something that doesn't actually exist, right? And I think for me it's become about bringing this awareness of like, what is my intention here? Like, is my intention of doing this project because I really want to do it? Is the intention to make money? Is the intention for joy? And like, not that one's right and one's wrong, but just actually know why I'm saying yes and why I'm doing each thing. Same with the phone. What is my intention of picking up the phone right now? Is it just to scroll on Instagram for half an hour? If so, that's okay. But actually going into it with the intention of being aware of what I'm actually doing and why I'm doing it.
That's interesting again, because it's not that linear thing of I'm going to use my Instagram page, for example, for this one thing, and here's my one intention. Because you're right, sometimes it will be to reach more people, and that's okay because you want to get your message out there. Sometimes it will be to help people. Sometimes it will be to make money because we have to live. We need an income of some sort, and that's okay. So you're right what you're saying. It's not, this is again the one line of why I do what I do. There's many different parts to it, just like what you were saying with your body and your mind and your spirit and who you are.
Exactly, and it's exactly that, and it's bringing back the awareness and the intention of why am I doing what I'm doing, and I think we can apply that to everything we do in our life. And again, there's no bad reasons. The same way, like, I'm not saying now I'm never gonna aimlessly scroll through Instagram or TikTok. Sometimes I love watching random videos of I don't know, some guy in America going through a supermarket and putting funny ducks on people's head, like that can bring me joy.
Yeah.
The issue isn't that. The issue is the mindlessness of doing it. So like the other day, for example, I was like, do you know what, I'm gonna go on my phone, I'm gonna sit on TikTok for half an hour and just actually enjoy it. Because the other issue is what I was doing before. I was using it all the time, but also had this voice in the back of my head of like, you shouldn't be doing this, you're scrolling, you're wasting time. So it's like I'm doing it and condemning myself for doing it and then feeling bad about it, and it's just like, this is crazy.
Yeah, an endless cycle.
Yeah, but I do enjoy it the same way, like as you've alluded to, I also enjoy money. I don't feel like everyone should like not work and all just live off the land, and that's not a part of me either, that I think sometimes people get confused with. But it's just doing things in a way that serve you.
How has living on the houseboat served you?
Good question. I think the ability to move around is a really strong one. Like, I sense, and I can't say this for sure, and maybe I'm just trying to blame something, but the particular kind of imbalance of the scales I referred to, I feel like could have a part to play that we haven't moved in 6 months. And it's like we took on this mooring spot and we stayed here, and then I just started to fill my plate with all this stuff. And I think what I'm so excited for and what I had enjoyed that serves me is this idea of like waking up, cruising the boat to somewhere and we don't know where it's going to be, stopping there that evening. And I use this example of like, you know, the sofa I can see now as I talk to you, that same sofa with the same cup of tea I'll be sitting on, but every single day or week, as I look out the window, there's a completely different view. So it's like this, I have this container of my home that never changes, but everything outside constantly changes. And that definitely serves me. Like some people would probably find that unstable, but for me, having these nomadic tendencies is amazing. I also think learning to live, well, I'd say learning to live with less, but prior to this, we were pretty much living out of a backpack. So when people are like, how do you handle the small space? We were like, we were in a tent for like near enough 4 or 5 years. Like we've got a bed and a sofa. I remember when we bought plates, we were like, you've never seen two people this excited in TK Maxx to buy plates before, because we were just like, we own our own plates. So we didn't have that transition that some boaters go through of this whole big downsize, but still at the same time, yeah, learning to live within our means, learning to also be mindful of consumption. Like, you know, if we run out of water, we can't just leave our tap on constantly. We have to go to a water point and source water. Or when your toilet tank's full, if you run out of gas, like there's a kind of primitive element to it of finding your own resources and being grateful and mindful of your consumption of those. So yeah, I'd say those are a few ways that it served me.
What would you say is the biggest lesson you've learnt over the past 4 years living on the boat?
What a question. The biggest lesson I've learned. Oh my gosh. I guess, which is a similar theme to we spoke about so much, is just to have awareness. Like have awareness in the way I'm showing up, the way I live my life, the decisions I make, the way I speak to people, the thoughts I have. If like I keep an awareness over it all, then I'm not really ever doing anything mindlessly, and I can act from a place, I guess, of integrity and growth.
This episode is brought to you by Mind Journal, the world's #1 best-selling journal for men. And I was very selective when choosing a sponsor because I've always said I would genuinely prefer not to have one than to team up with a product that I don't believe in. I'm a huge fan of journaling, and one of the main reasons for choosing Mind Journal is that it's developed with psychology professors and therapists and based on proven science, and that's why I believe it works for me. If you want to get into journaling, upgrade your experience, or give it as a gift to someone, then go to mindjournals.com and enter Rory Smith 10 at checkout for a 10% discount on selected products. I only have sponsors I truly believe in. Mind Journal has helped me, and I really hope it helps you too.